Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Geeked Out. My name is Kyle.
I'm Juan.
And so, with the release of Marvel's newest movie, Madam Web, coming out in just a few days, we decided to go back and watch the first time we got to see the real Webhead on the big screen. We watched Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. This movie was originally released on May 3rd of 2002, and it stars Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, Willem Dafoe, James Franco, and of course the great J.K. Simmons. It was written by David Koepp and directed by Sam Raimi. Now, this movie has a 7.4 out of 10 on IMDb, and on Rotten Tomatoes it has a 90% critic score with an audience score of 67%. I'm a little surprised that the audience score is that low for this film.
Yeah, it's weird.
I, I don't know why. I don't understand why. I mean, it had a great run, a great response when it came out. The budget for this movie was 139 million, which I didn't realize it was that high. But
It's
the
those
bu-
goddamn it's those goddamn amazing Spider-Man fans. They purposely
you know what, that wouldn't
low
surprise me.
ratings. Nah, I'm kidding.
No, I'm
But
I'm serious. That kind of shit does happen. I mean, if people, I don't understand anybody who would like those Andrew Garfield movies over these, but hey, to each their own. I just don't get it because, like I say, it had a budget of 139 million, and worldwide it grossed over 825 million. So
oh yeah,
clearly everybody was liking this.
it was the movie to see in 2002. In 2001, like it was supposed to come out in 2001 because there was a lot of buzz around it around then. So you were hyped for so long for this movie.
Yeah, I remember that. And there's something we'll get to later about because of when it was released. There's a big famous a
Famous.
moment. Oh, it's a big famous moment in the movie that was taken out. I'm
Infamous.
sure. I'm sure you know. Oh yeah, infamous. I guess is a better word to describe it.
No, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But so, for a little bit of a background, as many of you know, I'm sure Spider-Man is a Marvel superhero character created in 1962 by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko,
Is there?
and since then he has appeared in, alongside his comics, numerous television shows and films, and continues to be one of Marvel's top-selling heroes.
He's the face of Marvel. Like when you think of Marvel,
I would say
Spider-Man,
I
one
would
of
say he's the
three characters.
consistent face.
Yeah, pretty much.
Depending on what time frame you're talking, it does differ, but I would say consistent ever since the 60s. He's been that
Yeah.
consistent one.
And ever since this movie came out, he's been the number one superhero in popularity and when it comes to merchandise. Spider-Man merchandise outsells every other superhero combined. And I
Yeah,
think
that doesn't surprise me.
a lot of that has to do with the success of the trilogy, but more so the very first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, this movie was huge when it first came out. I remember when this was in theaters and the buzz around it was just uh, it was constant. I mean, everybody was going to see it. Many of my friends went and saw it multiple times. Um, what did I'm guessing you saw this in theaters or?
I saw this shit in theaters like 3 times. I think I seen it once with my mom, one with my dad, and then I lied about who I was to get on a field trip to go see it. I like assumed someone's identity.
So you must be a fan of those Garfield movies because that's exactly what he does.
Uh, I guess. I love Spider-Man. Like he's honestly when it comes to superheroes, he's top probably 3 for me. I'd have to think about it, but he's definitely top 5.
Yeah, I've always been a big Spider-Man fan. Him, so like growing up, I mean, people nowadays they look at Marvel and everything as the Avengers, this and that. A lot of people don't realize that for the longest time, nobody gave a shit about the Avengers. The only reason the Avengers got made is because Marvel, when they started making the MCU movies, they had lost the rights to their top names, being that Spider-Man, which is owned by Sony, and X-Men owned by Fox, because they had lost those rights. So they just decided when they started doing Iron Man, they took a shot in the dark, and it paid off massively. But like
Yeah.
when we were kids in the '90s, nobody cared. Nobody gave a shit about Iron Man or Thor. None of them. Everything was Spider-Man and X-Men. Those were the big ones.
Yeah. Well, they tried to make a lot of their characters popular, and some did stick. Like Incredible Hulk entered the zeitgeist because of Lou Ferrigno in the television series with
Yeah,
Bill
but that was in the
Bixby.
'70s.
True, but because that show was so popular that it carried over for many, many decades still. Like people know the Hulk.
Oh, I'm not saying they don't know him, but like I would say that that show, at least for kids that I don't know about like friends of yours growing up, but people that I knew growing up, everybody kind of viewed that show in the same way that most people looked at um, the '60s Batman series. It was just because everybody was like it was a joke. That's how, and I'll be honest, none of us really ever watched it. So
I watched it.
all we knew of it was like the clips that you would see when it would just be Lou Ferrigno in the makeup, and it was like this is a joke. Like this
Yeah.
isn't
Well,
anything good.
I I my parents grew up on old school television, so they threw that upon me. So I grew up watching the Hulk and from the 70s. And I was really into superheroes around that time. And, if not in live action, kids were familiar with the lesser known because they attempted cartoons throughout even the 60s that a lot of people don't know. Like they attempted a Hulk quite a few times, Fantastic Four a few times. So if you were young and into the animation scene, yeah, you would know probably the lesser known characters, but nah, they not really people weren't really checking for any of those characters.
But like you say, that with the animation, like when we were kids, it was still like Spider-Man the animated series was it was hugely popular growing up. I mean, even aside from that, I remember watching the cartoon, the cartoon from the '60s. Like
Yeah,
and I loved all of those. It's just, and then when this movie came out, it was so the year before. I believe it was the because this was '02, so I believe X-Men was 2000.
it was. Yeah, it was.
And before X-Men came out, most comic book movies were viewed as jokes, aside from the two Tim Burton Batmans. A lot of them, like Blade, was dark and gritty and things like that. But then you had things like Batman Forever and Batman and Robin and Spawn, and people just didn't think that they were uh, legitimate films or even things that could make a good like the Batman movies made money, but the vitriol that they received from like fans and backlash, they I don't think they thought they were really viable. But it was X-Men and Spider-Man are the I would attribute to being the ones that are really responsible for the zeitgeist of where we're at now.
Yeah, mainly because they had competent directors as opposed to those superhero movies back in the day, aside from like a Richard Donner or a Tim Burton. Um, but any other when superhero movies, um, like I mean, Joel Schumacher, I don't really know his filmography, but I know the way he directed Batman was purposely to be like a silly, goofy, comic book because he believed comic books were silly and goofy and for kids.
Well, there was a thing that I've even heard or I've read somewhere. I don't remember exactly where I had first learned this, but when they were doing Batman and Robin, he would sit in almost like a crane, like kind of above the set as they were filming, with a megaphone, and he would literally like say out to the cast before he would call action, like, remember, this is a cartoon. Like, so right from the get go, he thought of it as, from the sounds of it, almost like a joke, which is
Yeah.
really unfortunate because you've been given, you had the first two Batman films that were hugely successful, and then he's given the keys to this kingdom, and he basically takes a dump on all the fans by turning it into this joke, which is really sad. But
And Blade, a lot of people don't even realize Blade is a comic book character. So he kind of skated by that whole thing, you know.
yeah, I guess I could see that. Spawn probably the
It
same
technically
way.
it is. It is a superhero movie, but no, they didn't try to like, you know, reaffirm that it is in a Marvel universe. It kind of just was its own separate standalone thing.
Yeah,
But that is that would be the first. It was literally the movie that saved Marvel because at that time it was near bankruptcy, and
yeah,
that's why they sold all the movie rights to their popular characters just so they could get some money.
yeah.
And it was because of Blade's success that they were able to build on that and escape bankruptcy, which would have who knows what would have happened.
But what's really funny is I would be willing to venture a guess, and I would probably even put money on this. Had they not sold things like X-Men and Spider-Man, and they tried to build the MCU around that, I don't know if it would. I don't think it would have worked the way it has with the way they built it with things like, or characters like Iron Man and Thor and Captain America, the ones who were always thought as the lesser of their superhero characters. I don't think it would have worked.
I mean, it just depends on who would have been behind it, backed it. I mean, I don't know if you know, but um, there was a script floating around for a Spider-Man movie before, you know, Sam Raimi got a hold of it, and they wanted James Cameron to direct it.
I think I vaguely remember hearing something about that.
Yeah, and that script is I. It's been years since I read it, at least some of it, but it was so far off from who the character is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Well, why don't we get into it? I got a brief summary here. So I'm guessing most of our listeners have seen this movie, and for those of you who haven't, here's just a little brief rundown. So Peter Parker is basically a loser in high school, who is who's bitten.
Loser.
Oh, he's a loser. He
Just a nerd. Doesn't have a backbone. Yeah. I guess you could
yeah. I mean,
view him as a loser.
he is.
I like Peter Parker, man.
You like what?
I like Peter Parker.
You like you like Peter Parker before he gets bitten or after? Because there's a big difference.
Yeah, or he's kind of a dweeb.
Well, he's
He's
very
a
much
dweeb.
so a dweeb. But he is bitten
Eh,
by a genetically engineered spider, which gives him spider-like abilities, hence the name. All meanwhile, at the same time, his best friend's father, Norman Osborn, takes a super soldier serum, which causes him to go a little bit psychotic, and he ends up adopting the moniker of the Green Goblin. And during this film, all roads point towards an epic climactic battle atop the Queensboro Bridge, which a scene that should have involved a character named Gwen Stacy. I will get to that later. But that's basically it. It's the movie is kind of the battle between Spider-Man and Green Goblin, along with Peter trying to deal with being a young man with um, typical love issues and friendship issues and family and all that other stuff. That's a pretty vague description of this movie because I started to write out a summary and I was like, once you start putting in a couple little details, you have to almost put everything, and then it becomes a fucking page and a half. This movie is so dense, but it doesn't feel that way.
No,
Like when like I say, when I started writing it, like writing out a bit of a summary, that's all I could think of was that there's so much going on, and yet when you watch the movie, it all melds together so well, and it doesn't feel like there's a lot going on. Like there are actually parts of this movie that they're almost to the point where I wouldn't say drags, but it's like, could something happen? But in the meantime, if you think about it, it's like it's constant, which is really I would say a badge of honor on Sam Raimi and what he accomplished with this movie.
Yeah, it's very well balanced. I'd say it's probably the gold standard for a blueprint on how to film a competent superhero movie. It nails all the checks and all the boxes. Good origin, great setup for the villain, especially with Peter and his particular troubles that he goes through as Spider-Man. I think they nailed Sam Raimi. Nailed it. And yeah, like the pace of this movie is great. Yeah, there's probably a scene or two that definitely you would think could have been shortened. But no, rewatching this movie, I not only does it holds up, I think it I still think it's one of the best origin superhero movies of all time. It's right up there with Superman.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I've got it on the TV in the background here, and I think one of the reasons why it was so successful in it not feeling like it's dragging or things like that is they get right into it. I mean, he just got bitten by the spider, and it's 10 and a half minutes into the movie. Whereas a lot of superhero movies, when they do an origin story, it takes a lot of times they take too much time to set things up, um, and that's where it kind of feels like it usually drags. I will say one thing right off the bat that I really disliked about this movie is the opening credits. I hated that animation, that those webs, and it takes like three and a half minutes. That drove me nuts. And it was very much a sign of the times, I feel, with the animation that they used.
I didn't mind it. It didn't bother me, but I could see why it could bother some people.
Yeah, I don't know why it irritated me. I think a part of it was because of how long it went on for.
Yeah.
But
I think the whole movie is so nostalgic for me that, the second those credits roll, I'm in, and it
oh,
would
I'm not
it would
saying
be
I'm
weird
not in.
to skip, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think for me I'm biased because this movie came out at a crucial time, and I was, I still freaking I still really really enjoy this movie.
Oh, I'm not saying I don't enjoy it. I think it's a great movie.
But yeah, well, yeah. You're just talking about the opening credits. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I want to ask you though something. So and this is a debate, or not even a debate because there's not really much to argue about. But I want to know your opinion on the actors that they get to play the high school students, the ones who are supposed to be like 17 and 18.
I mean, Hollywood in the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 years have smartened up, and they're starting to cast actual of age high schoolers for the roles. But they didn't learn that shit in the early 2000s. So yes, of course, they still was on the idea that they should cast people in their mid-20s to damn near 30s. And whatever. I was so used to it at that point that didn't bother me. But now that movies are casting younger kids, it just stands out way, way more now. Looking
Yeah,
back,
I mean, if you take just Spider-Man movies alone, put up the cast of the high school students in this one to the ones in Homecoming with Tom Holland, and it's night and day. I mean, the ones in this movie look like they could be their parents.
and they're only supposed to be a couple years older,
Yeah,
and they look like they're 10 years older at least.
I mean, in the opening scene when he's trying to get on the bus, there's like a close up of Joe Manganiello, who I'm a huge fan of, and I love seeing him in this role as Flash Thompson. But when he's sitting next to MJ on the bus, the camera's really close to his face. Dude has got a 5 o'clock shadow deeper than the fucking bus driver.
Right? I'm like,
And he's
do
supposed to be 17. I get that's possible, but I mean, come on. He doesn't look anywhere close to 17.
Yeah, well, it doesn't add to the fact that later on in the movie, they they have a teacher who looks the same goddamn age as them.
Oh, the Whisper teacher, who I love that character.
It did not. They should have casted somebody a little bit older, because this guy looked the same age as the students. That that there's only a couple things that
Dude,
bother me.
they could have cast
That's
any.
one of them.
They could have taken any one of the actors that they put on the Oscorp board of directors, one of the faces that just doesn't say a fucking word,
The
and made
motherfucker
them
in the
the teacher.
wheelchair,
Just make them the teacher.
right? Should have put fucking discount Charles Xavier in that role. I only mention it because I have to go on a mini rant, and it involves him in that scene, in a scene.
The guy in the wheelchair. Which scene are we talking? Or you want to get to that when we get
No,
to it?
this is when he gets. This is during the attack, during the parade.
Oh
I don't.
God, that fucking Unity Day parade.
It's more of like a plot hole slash little rant, I guess, but we can get to that later. It's fine.
Okay. Well, now that I've asked about the young actors, what do you think about Great Grandpa Ben and May?
Oh, they're perfect.
They're too.
They're perfect.
I think they're great, but I can't get and I know that in the comics and the cartoon, Aunt May is usually portrayed as a
Yeah.
elderly, close to elderly woman.
Look,
But to me,
I
the
know where you're going
timing.
with this.
No, to me the timing just doesn't make sense because
It doesn't
now
make sense. It
no,
doesn't. I was trying to make it sense in my head. Like,
I've figured out that it could make
how
sense,
old would
but
his mom be? What?
well, that's the thing. So it's got to be Ben has to be his dad's brother, unless they're his great aunt and great uncle, because it's the same last name. So if it's his brother, the only way that it would work, because
Yeah.
he says that he's 68 or something like that. The only way that makes sense is if there's like a 20-year difference in age between Ben and Peter's dad.
Yeah, like Ben's mom had him at when she was like 19, and then had Peter's dad when she was like close to 40.
Now, don't get me wrong; it is possible. Like even in my own family, I
But
have
you really have to stretch. You
well, like
gotta
even,
stretch your goddamn your disbelief there,
and
for
I think
sure.
that's why I was able to come to that conclusion so quickly because even in my own family, on one side of my family, I have two uncles that are like 18 years apart or something like that, from the
Yeah.
oldest to the youngest. So it is possible. But like to not even acknowledge that, or I mean that's why I think that they were as great as they are in this movie. I think the casting was better in the Amazing Spider-Man
Oh,
and the Homecoming ones because the age was just
no.
a little more appropriate.
That's the okay. I'll give you that. But as much as Sam Raimi made changes within the origin, he wanted to keep at least the, the important parts true to the comics. And the fact that Aunt May and Uncle Ben are old as shit is true to the comics.
No, I
So
agree.
I don't
it just
mind. Like, but because eternally, whenever I picture Aunt May, I picture her as an elderly lady.
oh yeah, Rosemary
You know what I'm
Harris as
saying?
Aunt May is perfect. I'm not saying it bothers me. It's just I question it every time I watch this
Oh
movie.
yeah, for sure. You definitely have to question it. I question it ever since I knew of the character, but you know, I've since just rolled with it. You know what I mean?
No, I completely
But
get that.
yeah, it does not make sense. I mean, it's not a typical dynamic.
No, not at all.
But hey, it is what it is. But no, I- as actors, they knocked it out of the park.
Oh, they did phenomenally. Cliff Robertson as Uncle Ben is fantastic. It's an iconic role that he's in. Everybody who's seen this movie knows exactly. If you see a picture of him, it's like, oh, that's Uncle Ben. You just know it right off the bat.
And he's like the definitive Uncle Ben image in people's minds.
So as we go through this movie, there's a lot of like when the movie opens, there's the narration of Peter talking about that this story is about a girl, and that girl is Mary Jane, MJ, the whole thing. Um, and I think that the funniest thing is as we progress through the movie a little bit, we see that she's with Flash Thompson, who's the big jock bully played by, as mentioned previously, Joe Manganiello. And I love the scene when he shows up at her and Peter having the little discussion in the backyard because they're next door neighbors. And he shows up to pick her up in his new, he calls it his birthday present. Dude's driving a fucking Prowler. Now, for any of you out there who don't know what this car is, please do yourselves a favor and look it up. I remember when these things were popular, like when because they were an older car, and I remember they brought them back around this time, and they were hugely popular, and they look like one of the dumbest vehicles that I've ever seen, in my personal opinion. But
Hmm.
that's my opinion.
Yeah, I don't remember the car. I don't remember what it looked like. I just remember being like,
You only see the back end of it, but you can tell that that's what it is.
oh,
But the funniest thing is Peter, as soon as he sees that, he immediately the next scene is him looking at like flyers of car ads, and it's like in his brain, it's like, oh, car equals girl. So I need to get a car to get a girl, and then the way he's going to get money, which I love, being a fan of it myself, is he is going to go
wrestling.
and he's going to go wrestle, and he
Oh,
wrestles Bonesaw McGraw, played by the great Macho Man Randy Savage.
Which is great because they melded, part of the origins in the comics. Like that's exactly what Spider-Man did. I don't think it yeah, it was wrestling. Yeah, he was a wrestler, and that's why he had that costume, the iconic
Yes.
Spider-Man costume. So I liked how, again, even though Sam Raimi took some liberties with the origin, he tried to keep it as true to the comic origin as he could.
And I will say I love this because if you're paying attention to this scene, you get a cameo of a much younger Octavia Spencer, which I thought was a
Oh
really
yeah,
cool thing. I completely forgot she was in this movie.
she's been around as a background slash character with a couple lines for
Oh
many
yeah,
many years.
she's just come out as a big star the past 5 or 10 years type thing.
I knew she was in this movie, but I forgot.
There's a few people like that. Another one we'll get to when we get to the Bugle. But I love this because then you also get, I mean, you get the naming of him as well by Bruce Campbell, obviously a Sam Raimi, uh, a staple from the Evil Dead series, and he is actually the one who gives him the name, which I love that. I love that part because he's, oh, what's your name, kid? He goes, the Human Spider. That's terrible. And he introduces him as the Amazing Spider-Man, and I just love that Peter, once after he says that, he's still looking off stage and he's going, no, he got my name wrong.
Right? Like, bro, Spider-Man is a dope name. You talking about?
No, he's the Human Spider.
Like that shit is lame. But yeah. No, that wrestling scene is fan-fucking-tastic, man. Dude, Macho Man Randy Savage, I, right next to Stone Cold, is my favorite wrestler. He's my favorite 80s wrestler, 100%.
I
And
always loved Macho Man.
he's always battling Stone Cold as my all-time favorite.
No,
Dude,
I'm an HBK fan myself, but that's neither here nor there.
oh, but yeah, no, Macho Man is freaking perfect for this Bonesaw.
It's the voice.
Bonesaw McGraw?
Yeah,
Bonesaw.
Bonesaw McGraw.
Goodness gracious, the name is great. The fact that
It's all in the voice though.
he, right, and they just let him just be him
Oh
in the
yeah,
ring,
because that's literally just him like cutting a promo.
right? He had no lines. They just let him just do what he does.
And you get to see him drop the elbow off the top rope, the whole all the iconic Macho Man stuff.
Oh yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was great. But a little problematic was a couple lines, dialogue in that scene.
Yeah, there is, but you know what? That's us looking at it in a 2024 lens. I mean, this movie came out
Yeah,
22 years ago, which every
nothing
time
that would nothing that would draw attention to it. But yeah, no, that I think about that particular line, it's like, yeah, no, that definitely
you know
would
what? I
have.
mean, there's something more problematic for me in this movie than the dialogue, and that's the fucking organic web shooters.
Oh yeah, don't get. Dude. I've always hated that. I always thought that was the worst, dumbest thing of choice for of Sam Raimi, man. I was like that no.
Dude, they do a close up
Should
and
not have done that.
they do a close up and they show his wrist, and it looks like a fucking puddle of fucking jizz on his wrist. It's so stupid.
It is stupid, and it's stupid because one of the key things about Spider-Man, Peter Parker, is that he is super smart and resourceful. And one of those examples of his resourcefulness is building these web shooters.
Yeah.
Also, one of the classic moments in a Spider-Man show or comic panel is when he's fighting a villain and he runs out of web fluid.
Yeah.
That's something that happens all the time, and he has to improvise to, you know, to account for not having web fluid.
Yeah, if his
And
body just makes it, he's never going to run out.
the fact that he did that just undercut so much of what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that statement. It's bothered me for so many years, and I hate those
Yeah,
fucking organic shooters.
yeah, it's definitely a misstep and an otherwise very, very well done movie.
I mean, I wonder if the reason he did it that way is because, as I stated when I kind of was trying to write out a summary, this movie is so jam packed with stuff that he thought he would have to explain it, and he didn't want to add another thing to the script, so he just kind of put it in as if it comes out naturally, like it does with a spider.
It could have been that. Was it just? It's easier, just easier that way.
Yeah, I mean, it very well could have been that as well.
Could have been a little lazy. Could have been a little lazy there.
But I do have a question going back to that wrestling scene. So he's got why does his spider sense only work some of the time?
I think
Bonesaw hits him, he nails him with a chair. Now you would think your Spider-Man would work with that, or your spider sense would work against a chair.
true, but he's still figuring himself out. He's still figuring all his shit out. I guess. I guess they just didn't hold your hand or at least give you any type of hint that that was the case. You gotta have to come up with your own theory.
I
Why?
personally think it was just an oversight, and they just kind of.
But if his spider sense to go off, yeah, it would have in that particular scene. Yeah, it would have caused problems going off that many times. So I guess they kind of just
Let it go.
just let it go.
And I apologize. We completely skipped over. I got right into the wrestling. We completely skipped over when his uncle drops him off.
Oh yeah, the speech, the
Yeah.
line.
You know what? It's not even as much as I love the line. Peter in this scene is such a dick to his uncle.
It's it's for a reason.
I get that, but I just the whole thing about it, all his uncle is trying to do is talk to him, get in touch. I get that he's a teenager and he's angsty and he's blah 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 going through changes, but it's the line where he says, I'm not trying to, I know I'm not your father," and Peter just, "then stop trying to be." It just, you can see Cliff Robertson's heart like break on camera. That's how well
Yeah.
he plays the role. But then, yes, of course, there's the iconic line, if you'd like to utter it.
Oh, with great power comes great responsibility.
It's such an iconic line, and it's the perfect description for a hero.
For sure. And it's not like he didn't know that his uncle was going to get murdered. So
No, I know.
He just he caught him in a moment of weakness, and he did some spouted out some bullshit impulsively. Yeah. Looking at it when I was younger, I didn't really catch how much it really did affect Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
But again, it only affected Uncle Ben in that moment as well as Peter.
Yeah, I
And
agree. It wasn't something I noticed very much as a kid, but
and it
seeing it
adds it
now,
right, and it adds to the guilt of Peter when
when he
his
murders his killer, who
yeah
then gets retconned in the third movie.
yeah Well, it's these reasons why he pursues crime fighting instead of getting money, because that was his original goal in the comics, was to get money, but then letting the uncle killer go and
Yeah,
him killing his uncle guilted him into a life of crime fighting.
yeah, absolutely.
So I guess, that particular argument was definitely just to add to all that.
Yeah.
Add the fuel.
So I want to get into, like I said, the plot of this movie. I don't really think we need to go beat by beat with this. Like I said, everybody's seen this movie. I want to talk about who I consider to be quite possibly I would say within the top three Marvel villains of all time. And that's Willem Dafoe playing the Green Goblin. I want to know what you think about this portrayal. And I know you're a huge fan of Spider-Man, the comic, the show, everything. So I want to know what you think about this.
It's great. I mean, they nailed the whole dual personality thing. I'm pretty sure that's a thing in the comics. Um, Willem Dafoe was perfect, man, because essentially uh, Green Goblin is, in a sense, there's a couple characters who you could pin this to, but you could definitely pin it to one character in particular. And yeah, Green Goblin is like Marvel's Joker, and they picked a very good person to play a just insane villain who is a serious threat.
Yeah, it's funny
Like, because
when he
I've always fan casted Willem Dafoe as the Joker. I think if you would have casted Willem Dafoe in the Joker movie, dude,
he'd
you
knock
wouldn't
it out
even
of the park.
this motherfucker didn't even need makeup. This motherfucker is Joker.
Yeah,
Has the perfect
the
Joker
way he
face.
can smile,
Oh man. And all that energy he put into Green Goblin.
which is funny because if you watch when you watch the movie when he first shows up at the beginning with probably one of his most famous lines of when he says to Peter, "I'm a bit of a scientist myself," which I always love that line. But
Oh, it's
he,
a meme. It's one of the most famous memes of all time.
yeah, but he seems like such a meek and not shy, but kind of like reserved character. And then as soon as he takes the serum, he just a switch flips. And that dual personality you're referring to, that scene with him with the mirror might be my favorite scene in this entire movie.
Yeah, whenever he's doing the dual role, talking, I guess, battling within himself,
Yeah.
having that conversation, it's brilliant.
And there's even the times when it's just a random thing of when he's in his apartment and you just hear the echoing laughter coming from somewhere in the room, like somewhere in the apartment. And him as Norman Osborn has like that terrified look on his face, like where is that coming from? What is that? It's like he doesn't know. And that's something that I really enjoy about this, or about the portrayal of that character.
Yeah, I like the approach. I like how he was written. They casted the perfect guy. A thing that a lot of people, and it would be one of the only complaints of the Green Goblin,
The mask.
which over time, it makes I
Don't defend it, please, for the
I
love of
learned
God.
I learned to accept it, and when you really think about it, you'd have to come up with a lot of BS to explain his comic accurate suit, bring that into live action. I think the movie suit is great. Not great. Fuck it. I'm gonna say great. I'll
I
defend
love.
it.
So I have a note. I have a note here that I wrote down, and it actually says that the whole aesthetic of the Goblin looks fantastic, aside from the helmet. But at the same time, and now I'm sure a lot of people. I'm sure you've seen the videos on YouTube of the rubber like
Oh yeah.
animatronic mask, whatever that they had made. That thing looked cool as shit, but it didn't work well enough for them to
And it
allow
was
it to
scary
be
as
used.
fuck.
Oh, it was terrifying. That
I
was
don't think that would have worked. That would have been too scary. And
what worked is, and we're gonna. This is spoiler for Spider-Man: No Way Home. What worked is the way he comes back in that movie, where he's just got like the torn up hoodie, kind of pulled over his head.
yeah,
I think that worked
they made
really
this.
well.
They made that suit work by adding that. But yeah, if they would have thought of that in this movie, that would have been great.
Because I don't
But
understand why
it's
why
still
you
not
think.
terrible. It's not as bad as people make it out to be. They compare it to a Power Ranger, which
The
I
only
don't see
reason
it. I don't see that
I
when I
feel the
look.
only reason they say that is because the power, it's just because of the way the helmet is, where it's
I
almost like with the face and everything. But the one thing that I really dislike with the Goblin
mask.
mask
The
is
eyes.
the retractable eyes.
Yeah, that is one thing they should have just kept. They shouldn't have even retracted. Just leave it as it is. You could have the mouth, I guess, because the mouth freaking had a little open to like a screen or something. Yeah, have that. Have him be able to emote with his mouth, be able to see it, but not his eyes. It just made it look ridiculous. At least the mask whenever he's
When they do a
talking
close
through
up,
it. Yeah. Yeah. No, that whenever the eyes were retracted,
yeah, that was weird.
it just looks stupid.
I will say, I feel that pretty much everybody in this movie was spot on casting.
Whoa,
Hold on,
I got I got two that bothered me.
so do I. Who are your two? I wonder if they're the same.
Well, fucking James Franco, I think it was a miscast
Okay, why do you say that?
because I do not believe that him and Tobey Maguire, they didn't really have any. To me, they didn't have. It wasn't believable. I did not believe these motherfuckers grew up as best friends, especially playing.
They didn't though in this movie.
No.
No, because they talk about that Harry not hasn't been at the school very long because he kept getting
Oh.
expelled from private schools.
Okay. But they've been friends for at least a couple years, right? No?
I would think at least a year or two. I don't know. I don't think they really go into how long
Okay. Then that
it's
makes
been.
sense then. Okay. Okay.
But see,
But
I
still,
thought
I just don't like a lot of the roles James Franco has played, especially this role. There's just some about it. Some about the way the way he acts in films. I don't know if it's the facial
he's
expression,
very
something.
he's very smug.
It's just something that I don't believe. I, especially as Harry Osborn.
You know what? You know what the best thing that he ever did was Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah.
James Franco, I think, is more of a TV actor than a film actor.
I mean,
But
if you put him in the right role, yeah, he could definitely do his thing. But as the best friend role,
I will also say in his defense, though, I
Yeah.
don't think he was. I don't think he was that bad in this movie, but I also don't think they gave him enough to do.
True. And
Who,
the fact that I do not like him and his character is mostly because of the sequels.
yeah, I agree with that.
But I've never been a James Franco fan to begin with. He's just one of those actors that whenever I see him, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, he's always just been.
Care
Yeah,
less.
he's in the movie. Good for him. Like
Yeah, it's for me. He's just that actor. So
who's the other
that's
one that you think is a miscast? I wonder if
uh, Kirsten Dunst
I was gonna say, does she have red hair?
or fake ass red hair and a bland
Okay,
acting
so
approach to the role.
you and I have one of two because she's one of the ones I think is miscast as well.
Yeah, she's terrible. She's
I
terrible
don't
in this.
like her as Mary Jane at all.
Fucking hate her in this role, bro.
She's
Bland as shit.
she's bland. She's too bubbly, and they just make her like a regular Like Mary Jane in the comics was a very competent, intelligent character.
And
They just make her
honestly,
the damsel in distress.
and the thing about Mary Jane is on a scale of 1 to 10, she is a 12. Like she is crazy beautiful. Like she's a model. Like
Yeah,
she that's how she's known and drawn in the comics.
yeah,
Not
agreed.
taking away from Kristen Dunst. She's beautiful.
No,
Very
Kirsten
beautiful.
Dunst is a beautiful woman, but she's not the way she's described in the
No.
comics.
When it comes to this the comic accurate version of Mary Jane, they did not even come close.
You know what's really funny is who could have been somewhat and is a natural redhead. I'm pretty sure is um, Bryce Dallas Howard, who ended up playing Gwen Stacy in the Amazing Spider-Man. Or no, sorry, she played Gwen Stacy in the third Sam Raimi Spider-Man. She would have been a better casting for Mary Jane. However, I think she was just too young when this first movie was made.
For
And
sure.
I don't think she was acting really at that time yet.
But there would have been at the time in the 2000s
There
someone
had to be somebody better.
way goddamn better.
Well, you want to who? So my other miscast is Tobey Maguire, and I'll say this: I think he's a
Only
fantastic.
because he looked older.
No, I think he's a not for me anyways. I think he's a great Spider-Man in the
Oh,
costume. Hold on,
ooh,
I
no!
like I like him as Spider-Man in the costume. I despise him as Peter Parker.
I have the exact opposite. I think he's a good Peter Parker. I think he is a mid-ass Spider-Man. He is such a mid-ass Spider-Man.
I don't like him. I find him again the same thing you said about about Kirsten Dunst. I find him boring and bland as Peter Parker. He's almost apart from the scene with Uncle Ben. Every scene where he's as Peter in this movie, he looks either bored or confused.
I mean, I guess part of that could be that, all of this is happening in a very short time. So he's still trying to figure everything out. But Peter is he's a dork and he's always a dork. I think, yeah, like I said, Tobey, in my opinion, when it comes to Peter Parker, I think that it was pretty accurate. He only really gains confidence the longer he is Spider-Man. And he still realizes then he needs to act the same as Peter Parker.
Yeah,
And,
I get
but
that.
so for me, I think Toby did a good job as Peter Parker. Now his Spider-Man needs a major overhaul because that's not how I ever pictured Spider-Man. Motherfucker barely cracked any quips.
I knew you were going to talk about the quips because that's the other thing. With I was going to say is when I say I like his Spider-Man, I basically mean I think whether it's him or whoever it is looks like they fill out the suit, like they look good in the suit, the swinging, the choreography, stuff like that. But again, like you say, the only Spider-Man that we've had that actually does, because Peter Parker does a lot of things when he's fighting, almost like the way Deadpool does with cleaner language, is he never shuts up.
No, he
And
he's
and
constantly.
neither Tobey Maguire nor when they did the Andrew Garfield, neither one of them are like that. Tom Holland is perfect for that because especially the way he is in Civil War with that whole thing, he never stops because he just can't shut his mouth up. And
But they didn't really continue doing that. They kind of just did it in
they
Civil
do it a
War.
little bit, but not as much as they did in Civil War.
But like Homecoming, I don't think he did so many quips. I mean, he did a few.
He did it more with like with the Shocker than he did with Vulture.
Yeah.
But now I will get on to as great as the casting of Willem Dafoe in that, the casting of J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson, in my opinion, is the greatest and the most comic accurate casting in the history of film, in my opinion. There is nobody on this planet who could ever play J. Jonah Jameson again except for J.K. Simmons. And he looks spot on to the way he looks in the comics and the cartoons.
Yeah. I mean, they nailed it. They definitely nailed it. Um, I think Jay Jonah is definitely a role that I, some people could definitely nail it if you gave it to him, but when J.K. Simmons is so iconic that no one's taken that from him like ever.
No, to the point where they brought him back in the MCU, which I
Yeah,
loved.
you can only do a great job. You can't become the character like J.K. Simmons is freaking Jay Jonah. They're so intertwined with each other. Yeah, it was perfect casting. Definitely perfect casting.
You know, it's funny now that I bring up J. Jonah Jameson. I have a note about somebody else who works in his office, and she would
Robbie?
have made a
Um,
no, not Robbie. She would have made a better MJ because Elizabeth Banks, a much younger Elizabeth Banks as Betty Brant, I feel in the few seconds that they're on scene or on screen in the scenes they have together, her and Tobey Maguire have leaps and bounds more chemistry than him and Kirsten Dunst ever have.
yeah, they date in the comics. I think it's they
Yeah,
date.
they do. Yeah, him and
It's
Betty Brant do end up
before,
dating in the comics.
after Gwen, or even before Gwen. Yeah, Betty was she fit in there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because his main ones in the comics were Betty, Gwen, MJ, and Felicia.
yeah.
Who I'm surprised there's no mention. There's not even a mention of Felicia Hardy in the Sam Raimi movies that I can remember.
I
Actually,
think she
I don't know if she's been mentioned in any of the movies. Period.
would have been introduced in the fourth one. I think they would have made it.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. But yeah,
Yeah,
and then you've got Robbie Robertson, who's I love his character in this movie, and the way that actor plays him.
He's okay. He's great. He just had nothing. He had in the whole trilogy, he had maybe 5 minutes of less than 5 minutes of screen time, which just sucks because
Robbie's a big character.
He's a pretty important character. At least.
I did like the scene, and now it's kind of been going around. I've seen it a few times online in meme form, where Green Goblin comes in, kind of attacks Jameson to try and figure out who's taking the pictures of Spider-Man, and it shows his level of character when he basically protects Peter, because he's like, his stuff comes by mail. I don't know who does it, like, because all he had to do was just give up. Yep, it's this kid right here, and he could have been done with it. But as much as he loves his stories and his money and all that stuff, he won't. He still has the character that he's going to defend and protect Peter because he's just a kid.
Yeah, that's why J. Jonah is never such a hated character. It's because he's got integrity.
He's more of an annoying character than hated.
He's like a thorn in his Spider-Man's side.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
Yeah, I've always known that side of J. Jonah, so it wasn't a shock or a surprise, or I'm just glad that they added that to his character and they showed it.
Yeah, I like as well in this movie, and the cameo of Lucy Lawless in the montage. Did you catch that one?
Yeah. I always thought that was random.
It was random, but growing up as a kid loving things like Xena and that, I thought it was, I enjoyed it. I still enjoy it every time I see it. It kind of makes me chuckle. The one that dates this movie is the Unity Festival when they have Macy Gray performing.
Yeah, my favorite cameo, because it does date the movie so much.
I hated her when she was popular, and I still can't stand her now.
She killed it in Training Day. Give her respect, goddammit.
I honestly don't even remember that.
Oh yeah, she was in it for a couple minutes, but it was okay. It was really good. And then she disappeared. I don't know what the hell happened to Macy Gray, but most people
typical one-hit type wonder.
Most people only remember her because she was in goddamn Spider-Man.
I remember that her song, like her big
hit.
Yeah,
she's a one-hit wonder for sure. But like, everyone knows that. Who's seen it knows Macy Gray's in fucking Spider-Man.
Well, we're at the. I want to hear this rant about the Unity Day Festival before the fucking board members get turned into cartoon skeletons.
Discount Charles Xavier.
Yeah, okay. I'm really curious to hear what this is.
Green Goblin the way that he handles the board members, okay. He throws this pumpkin. What everyone thought would be a bomb because he's throwing fucking bombs throughout.
Well, because Green Goblin has pumpkin bombs.
But no, he throws this like weapon that like lights up or whatever, scans the board members, and then they turn into skeletons. And that's the only time you see that fucking weapon. Was that the only one?
But it still looks like a pumpkin bomb, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looked like a pumpkin bomb, but it didn't blow up. It just turned these motherfuckers into skeletons.
You know what? Okay.
Why didn't he have multiple of those bombs and it would have thrown that at Spider-Man? You know why? Because that would have ended the fucking movie.
You know what those skeletons look like? They look like they were taken straight out of Jason and the Argonauts.
That shit was taken straight
out of... They
looked
so bad.
The computer demo
Well, yeah,
skeleton.
it's 2002. We have to show off those CGI graphics,
I was such a
which
computerized skeleton. But it's like you had that powerful a weapon and did not use it again.
no, Spider-Man gets the knives, the flying knives,
Yeah, those fucking goddamn flying knives. And he
which
takes a pumpkin bomb to the face, which if that was a turn you into a skeleton bomb, movie would have been over.
but it caused no damage. In the third movie, we see that fucks your face right up.
Oh, that bomb fucked Toby's face up for sure when it went off. It
Nowhere
was
near what it does to Harry in the third one.
I'd have to rewatch it because I rewatched that scene where they fight and that shit it blew off his mask.
His mask is fabric.
True, but you should see the impact of his face, the slow motion.
Oh, I
Look at
know.
look at his face. It fucked his face up. But it didn't leave any scars or anything, so
No, there's no lasting damage. It's like a bloody nose.
because he's Spider-Man, he's not supposed to have scars. So, but yeah. No, yeah. No, that if I just don't like when they introduce such powerful weapons
and then never use it again.
Or they pull out a powerful weapon out of nowhere towards the end of the movie. I'm looking at you, Pacific Rim. You fucking assholes pulling out that invincible sword that cuts through anything at the end of the movie. We can use that at the beginning and solve the problem. Anyways, I just don't like when they do shit like that in a movie. And if you're gonna introduce a weapon like that and not use it, you shouldn't have introduced it in the first place.
The one that I don't like is the typical trope of the villain monologuing. So like the scene where where Goblin attacks, or sorry, Gobby as they call him in this, attacks the Bugle, and then Spider-Man shows up and he hits him with that like sleeping gas or whatever, the paralytic, whatever it is. Exactly. The moment the two of them are on top of a building, and it's like he just goes on placating and just if you want to defeat him so badly, he's completely incapacitated. Like you said, use one of those fucking skeleton disintegrator things.
There's a reason. In that particular scene, there's a reason.
He was trying to join him.
Exactly. He wasn't trying to kill him. He could have killed him, but he wanted to bring him onto his side. That was the only reason why he didn't kill him. He could have totally killed him if he knew that he was going to be on his side no matter what.
But he knows that he's not going to join him.
He's fucking crazy. So maybe we have to, add in the fact that Green Goblin is straight insane.
He 100% is.
So he's not in his right mind. He doesn't really know because he's fucking crazy at this point. He thinks he could honestly probably convert him into his side. So he gave him probably an honest chance before he started to try and kill him.
Yeah. Well, and at the Unity Day parade, Peter finds out he's already been told by Mary Jane that her and Harry are dating, or they're going out, as she puts it. But
this is another thing what bothers me, because doesn't Harry know that Peter is really feeling Mary Jane?
Yeah, he literally says when because right after this scene, because Peter sees them when he's taking pictures, so he sees them up on the balcony, and Harry looks down and sees Peter. And afterwards, they're back at their apartment, and they're kind of recouping from the attack, whatever. And Harry literally says to him, like, I know that you were into her, but you never made a move. It's like, that doesn't mean that she's fair game. Like, there's a code here. Like...
Exactly. A good friend Especially
Or if you're gonna do that, talk to the guy first.
yeah, but you can't establish, in my opinion, you can't establish these two as best friends and have him do some shit like that.
No, not at all. I don't think so, anyways.
Because that's just not what good friends do. So yeah, that just added my dislike of this version of Harry Osborn.
And rightfully so. I mean, it was a very, very poor decision on his part.
Yeah, and completely unnecessary to have a love triangle.
No, there was no point to have it in the
first movie. It worked better in the third movie, but it wasn't needed in the first movie.
No, I don't think so either, because like the third movie is different because they're kind of together, whereas nobody's with Mary Jane. It's just Peter is in love with her, but he's not with her.
Yeah.
Which then sets up the most awkward Thanksgiving ever put on screen. That whole scene is, as the kids nowadays say, cringy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, basically,
in more ways than one.
Well, fucking Norman basically accused. Well, first of all, there's the way he looks at Mary Jane. Like, just he looks her up and down, like licking his lips almost. And then,
I think,
that's the Goblin persona.
Exactly, he's in Goblin mode, so
Yeah.
He's very creepy and cringy.
But then even like the scene at when Harry's kind of confronts him when he leaves in the hallway when he's in the elevator, he literally basically says that Mary Jane is only interested in him for his money, and he utters the line, "Do what you need to with her, then broom her fast."
Yes, sir. That shit was tough. That shit was
now
rough.
This is a guy talking to his son.
I mean, it's Goblin.
I get that it's Goblin, but
he don't give a fuck. Goblin don't give a shit. Goblin knows what's up.
But I've always wondered, is he completely Goblin? Because when he sees
is he completely
but
bullshit? Because this version of Mary Jane, I could see going for Harry just because he's got some money.
But in that scene alone, when he realizes that Peter's arm is bleeding because of the knife thing that he had thrown at him.
Oh yeah, the 1,000 that he dodged.
Well, that's the scene that I refer to as superhero bullet time. But when he realizes that Peter's Spider-Man because of that, if he's in complete Goblin mode, wouldn't he just fucking snap and go after him? Like, he doesn't care if he's in a costume. He has the strength, that he has the superhero or super soldier serum in him. Like, he can fuck him up, no big deal. So I've always looked at that as wondering, is he really Goblin, or is just Goblin starting to kind of creep into Norman's normal persona?
Well, something that could, I guess, add to the reasoning behind that is there's a scene after where Norman is having a conversation with himself and saying that you must attack the heart. So maybe when he discovered it, he stepped back to formulate a plan.
Would you say that he went back to formula?
Sure.
That's another line I love earlier in this movie when that happens. The way that Willem Dafoe delivers that.
He's got so many like lines that people who enjoy this movie have probably uttered in their head since 2002.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever just seen somebody praying and you wanted to yell finish it?
I always say Godspeed, Spider-Man. It's
That I
mine.
will I will say that scene when he tells Aunt May to finish it and she just screams
Finish it.
and she's like
Ah,
deliver us. I'm like why why is he telling her to finish praying? I've never understood that.
Cause he
It's so
evil.
weird.
This motherfucker is evil.
And then it's the scream as she says it, the deliver. I'm like, oh god.
Yeah.
I will say
Evil.
one of
I
the
am evil.
one of the scenes that feels the most comic booky is like I said, I have the movie on in the background and it's at the Unity Day Festival. And it's when he flies away and he will meet again, Spider-Man. I'm like, that is so typical animated series,
Oh,
comic
yeah.
book. It's great.
Yeah, it's next time, Gadget. You know,
That's
it's
exactly what it is, and it's so spot on.
show.
I find that
Show.
this movie is a very good combination of being as realistic as they could with things like superpowers, but also allowing there to be that camp. Whereas like we had said, like Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, all that, they went way too hard on the camp factor. Whereas
Oh
I
yeah,
think this movie has just enough of it.
for sure. They stayed in camp.
Yeah.
Those,
Like I,
those
I love
Schumacher movies.
I love here when he's saving Mary Jane and he brings her to the rooftop and he's like, you know who I am. And you think it's like this intense moment and he's like, you can tell he's got the biggest smile under the mask. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Right? I mean, technically she should recognize his voice, but whatever. I'm not gonna
I
point
don't know
out
how
that
she, I don't know how she
that
doesn't.
whole like, wait, Peter, that what? I know you because of your voice, motherfucker. But
Well,
no,
and they do even have James Franco say at one point that he's been in love with her since the fourth grade. So they've known each other for years
yeah, better
and
watch.
grew up next door to one another. You would think she'd recognize his voice.
Almost instantly. You think she would, but you know, it's a superhero movie, so for some reason they can't.
Yeah, you have to suspend that disbelief.
They can't recognize voices through masks.
No, I guess not, but I don't know. And then later, when you get to what I've always referred to as the nipple scene, when he saves her from the muggers, whatever, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
the upside down
It was
kiss.
raining. It was cold. It was raining. She can't help it.
Except the fact that Sam Raimi made it rain and made her wear that costume. And
I'm
anyways,
gonna I'm gonna say one thing. Her cleavage was popping throughout that whole movie.
oh, that's the costume department that everybody has to thank for that. But
Part
I
of the
will
reason why
say
she passes the role.
it. So she's got when he's hanging upside down, and she later says that she thinks she's in love with him. So you would think that at that moment, this is now the second time that he's saved her, she's quote unquote in love with Spider Man. Why
Saved her
isn't
from
she?
being potentially. She was about to get gang raped.
Oh, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, she says that she's in love with him. Why does she stop when she's pulling the mask down? Just fucking yank it off his head.
That's what I'm saying.
Like
Because
if you're in love with this person, like legitimately, I understand it's more like a schoolgirl crush, but if she's legitimately wants to know who this is, what's stopping her from just fucking, when she's pulling it past his lips, just yank it down?
Yeet.
And
Yeet
that
that
looks
bitch
like,
down.
that scene looks like the most uncomfortable and awkward kiss.
Hey, it won the MTV Best Kiss Award. Okay.
Yeah, but so did I like the one that won a few years later, but that's just me.
It is the one of the most iconic kisses in cinema.
It is, but it's still,
Unfortunately,
to me it just looks weird.
it does look weird. It looks awkward. The motherfucker's upside down, and the rain's getting in his nose, and he has to make out.
I did hear a lot of issues with that Tobey Maguire went through when he was hanging upside down, whether it was like the blood rushing to his head or the water going up his nose, stuff like that.
But it made for an iconic scene that still gets parodied and referenced.
And everyone knows what it's referencing. It's not like it's obscure or anything. It's very recognizable.
Upside down kiss, bro. For sure.
But I will say, when we get to the climax of this movie, my issue with this iconic scene is the fact that they take a scene out of the comics that has such emotional resonance for people who have read that issue, and they just, because that's how Gwen Stacy dies in the comics, is basically the same situation that's going on with Mary Jane and the tram of kids that Green Goblin does at the end of this movie, which is such a huge emotional moment in the comics and eventually ends up leading to the death of Green Goblin and so on and so forth, or the original Green Goblin, whatever. I didn't like how they did that in this movie, and that it's one of my biggest gripes. One of my biggest gripes when you get to Spider-Man 3 is the fact that they made the timeline so backwards. The fact that Gwen is still alive in the third one. But that's one of my issues for a later date. I wasn't crazy on the way they ended this movie with that scene, and because that was the whole thing in the comic, that he wasn't able to save everybody. And that's something that he doesn't seem to learn in this movie or in any of these movies, really.
No. The quote, with great power comes great responsibility, that is a part of Spider-Man so much that, yeah, he always has to make the tough decisions. He always has to choose between the few against the many, or the one. And, and him struggling with that decision is...
But that never seems to happen in these movies, and I think it's because
that's part of his character.
And I think it's because they were trying to gear it towards a younger audience, and it's like, well, we can't have somebody die. Well, then what are we doing?
I honestly think Sam Raimi didn't really do much comic book reading when it comes to Spider-Man. So he kind of just maybe skimmed through a few and just made a lot of assumptions.
Yeah, because I would be willing to say that the death of Gwen Stacy and the subsequent death of Green Goblin is one of the most pivotal points in the history of Spider-Man, if not any Marvel comic thread that's ever been done.
And it's a trope that they did in a lot of early comic book movies, is they kill off the villain. I mean, Green Goblin is a recurring villain in the Spider-Man mythos. And, killing him off in the first movie, not sure if that was the best decision. You could have, kept them around. That's one of my gripes
Yeah, you're right. There really hasn't been a comic book movie ever, like of any, whether it be DC, Marvel, any of them, that's had like a really, really recurring villain.
No, because they kill them. They kill all of them.
I,
Yeah,
I've never really kind of noticed that. That's very interesting.
yeah, and it takes away from the whole being a superhero and not killing, because superheroes don't kill, but you know, in the movies they do for some reason.
Well, and the problem is you kill off Green Goblin, and then as you continue on in the series, it's like there was always a rumor of like, are we ever going to get that Sinister Six? And it's like, well, not if the villains keep dying, we're not.
That's impossible. Like, who are they gonna get?
So, oh, we're gonna get the Sinister Six. No, no, we're at the Sinister Two. The other ones are dead.
Well, you'll have to pull out some Z-list Spider-Man villains or create some. If you want that to work. But yeah, no, yeah. The fact that he died in this movie was whatever. I think it was unnecessary. But what comes of his death is another huge complaint of the whole trilogy of Spider-Man movies.
What's that? Harry putting on the costume?
Is the fact that Spider-Man did not tell Harry when Harry figured out Spider-Man was Peter that that Norman was trying to kill him and end
Yeah.
up killing himself. He could have pulled him aside at any point. But no, they needed a plot of Spider-Man 3. But anyways,
There is no plot of Spider-Man 3.
I do, even though I do like Spider-Man 3, I don't not like the movie. It was completely unrealistic
I
for
can
that
mind
thread to just be left hanging, and you don't. It was super unrealistic.
I can mind some positive things from Spider-Man 3, but not a whole lot. Not a lot of them.
Yeah, well, yeah. No, that's always been my biggest problem. One of them is the fact that he didn't just pull him aside and tell him what happened to his dad. He was trying to murder me, and he ended up killing himself.
Yeah.
All you had to say.
Now, I did have one little nitpick about this, and you might know this better than me. So, in one of the scenes when Harry comes home to the apartment that him and when Peter comes home to the apartment that him and Harry share, he mentions that he was fired by Dr. Connors. Are we to assume that that's Dr. Kurt Connors, who ends up being his professor in later movies and eventually was supposed to become the Lizard?
Yeah, I think they just mentioned that as like an Easter egg,
But
but
then he's
then
his professor.
yeah, they
So
eventually wrote him in this movie. He didn't have any plans for a sequel
what would
at
a
the
high
time.
school what would a high school graduate be doing working for a fucking like a research just like you know what I mean? He'd barely be a freshman in college. Oh God, it's at the upside down kiss scene. It is so awkward.
Yeah, I think they just wrote that as a Easter egg, and then Sam Raimi had no plans. And then when
Because
the sequel came, we made him a character.
it's something I don't think I ever really kind of picked up on before, but this with this rewatch, he's like, "Oh yeah, I got fired by Dr. Connors," and I was like, "I'm sorry, what did you say?"
They just wanted, they just put it in there for the diehard fans to go crazy for a second.
That was kind of what I thought, but I wasn't sure if it could have been referring to somebody else. You know what I mean? And I only say that because I know we get him in the later films.
Yeah.
Um, the only real last note that I have is So yeah, the climax, that fight ends up, as we had just said, culminating in the death of Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, and I did find it quite comedic, I guess, in a way, when Harry, he says don't tell Harry, but then Spider-Man brings Norman's body back to their penthouse apartment, and upon seeing this, James Franco just opens a random side table drawer and pulls out a gun. Like, why? Why do you just have tables in your house with guns in the drawers?
Hey, you gotta be ready.
Like,
You bought
does
that
that mean
life.
does that mean that every drawer has a gun in it, or just that this one convenient table?
Every other room. Every other room has a gun in it.
I that's something that's never really kind of popped out before, but it's like all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, you are so lovingly laying him down while wrapped in a blanket. You must have been the
Right?
one to kill. You must have been the one to kill him. Let me get
All
my
you had to say was he was trying to kill me and the fucking glider
yeah."
impaled into him. You could have told him, you could have said it right there. Nah, we gotta drag this shit out for 4, 5, 6 goddamn years.
I think great power also grants some great stupidity.
Just with great power becomes lack of
Common
sense.
sense. No, that wasn't even my last. My last note was, so when they're at the cemetery after the funeral, you see Peter go to his Uncle Ben's grave, and he's kind of reflecting on everything that he's gone through now that he's become Spider-Man. And Mary Jane comes over, and she basically, this is a weird moment to confess your love for somebody, but she uses this moment to tell Peter that she's in love with him, and she wants to be with him, and then she kisses him, and he basically says, like, I'm sorry, but being your friend is all I have. And it shows him walking away, and I just wrote, now he's supposed to be like 18 at this moment. I get that by looking at him it doesn't seem that way, but to have the girl that you've been in love with for like 10 years tell you that she's in love with you and kiss you the way that she kisses him, and then for you to just walk away, he has the most willpower of any 18-year-old on the history of the planet Earth.
Yeah, he's got great power. He's got great power to hold his urges.
Apparently, his suit isn't the only thing that's blue.
Apparently.
But no, the only other thing I was gonna mention was, we had discussed earlier in the opening about the scene that was deleted. You know what that you I'm sure you've heard. Have you seen the scene?
Which one?
The one that they deleted with the Twin Towers. Or did you know about that?
I know that they had to edit the final swing.
The reflection in his eyes.
Well, he lands. He's supposed to land on the Twin Towers, but he ends up landing on the Empire State Building, but he already swung by the Empire State Building. So it was like a glaring mistake. But yeah.
I thought he ended up on the Chrysler Building, but either way.
Or no,
yeah.
maybe it was Chrysler Building. Maybe. I don't.
So basically what it was is, obviously the year before this movie came out was 9/11, as we all know. But there was a scene that they originally had shot, and it was, I believe it was, he took down a group of like bank robbers.
That was part of the. It was part of the. It was like the first trailer, a part of the, maybe a TV spot, or one of the first promotions. Was that scene?
Yeah, and he ends up capturing them and webbing them, and they're kind of like suspended between the two towers.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, I think it was like a early footage or a trailer, one of the first things that they posted of Spider-Man
Yeah, and then they
was
had to edit it
was
out of the
this
movie.
was this definitely ill-timed.
Oh yeah, I don't blame them because I would have done the exact same thing. I mean, you can't
Yeah.
have that after what happened. I mean that.
Yeah. And at the very end they had to edit the Twin Towers out because when he's swinging through the city, he's supposed to land on the Twin Towers,
Yeah.
but they edited it to be a different building.
Well, there's even a scene in the movie where you get like the reflection in his on his eye lenses,
Okay.
and you don't see it in the movie, but if you watch some of the trailers, they show that same kind of close up on when he like lands on a building, and you can see the Twin Towers in the reflection of the eyes. And they've edited out of the movie, but like I said, it's still in some of the trailers if you can find them online.
Mm. Yeah, that was crazy.
But yeah, so I don't really have much else to talk about with this movie. I'm not sure about if you've got any more points you want to bring up.
Mm, let's see. What are my notes here? No. No, I pretty much got all of my points.
Okay, so I mean,
Yeah.
if there's not much else to talk about, we can move on to our closing thoughts. I'll say that overall, I really do like this movie. I mean, I know it might not sound like it with some of the some of the issues that I've brought up, but I do as a whole. I really enjoy this movie. I might not like it nearly as much as I did when I first saw it when it came out. Um, and there are many things that I can nitpick or that I didn't like that some of the choices that the filmmakers made, but I think it's still a really enjoyable movie. And as I said before, Willem Dafoe to this day is still one of my top three villains in Marvel. And to see him reprise that in No Way Home was, I mean, I was left almost speechless when I saw that. But with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give this movie a 7 out of 10. And I would highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it, and would recommend anybody who has seen it go back and watch it. It's you might not like it as much as you once did, but it's still a really fun movie, and like you said, it's one of the better origin movies that comic book movies have given us.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's it's a gold standard origin movie. Still holds up. The CG's slightly dated, but it for the most part holds up. Um, I'm giving this an 8, mostly because definitely my bias is peeking out a little bit.
I thought you were going to say mostly because of Kirsten Dunst's cleavage that you mentioned.
Oh yeah, well I was gonna say that for sure. That was a 7, but no. Um, definitely the things that work in this movie outweigh the things that didn't work for me. Um, I put this over the Andrew Garfield and Homecoming as a first movie into the series of movies to follow in the Spider-Man franchises. Uh, yeah, I um, I I enjoyed it a lot when I was a kid, and I thoroughly still enjoy it now. I definitely recommend this movie to anybody who hasn't seen it. And is a fan of superhero movies. It's a must watch.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that statement. But I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. And as always, I invite you guys to follow us on our socials, which I will post in the description of this episode. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Let us know what you think, and we'd really appreciate it. So next week we'll be back once again with our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man as we go back, and we're going to watch Spider-Man 2 from 2004. And I'm really looking forward to that because I love that. I like this movie. I love that movie. I preferred Spider-Man 2, in my own personal opinion, and I hope that I still do. And I hope that it's not a letdown when I get into that one, but I guess we'll have to see. So, until next time, thanks for listening, guys. Take it easy.
Peace.